The Outer Worlds for Nintendo Switch finally has a release date, but of course there's a little bit of a caveat going into this game. Google Stadia seems to be in a bit of trouble, and Google themselves isn't really doing much to help their case. EA gives a backhanded compliment to Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch owners, and finally, is the Nintendo Switch Pro dream over? Nintendo spoke out about new hardware in 2020 at their recent Q&A meeting, and some people are a bit confused and unhappy by this. So we're going to talk about all these stories right now. So sit back, relax, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new, and let's talk about what's going on in the world of video game news. So a game that I'm really looking forward to in 2020 for the Nintendo Switch is The Outer Worlds. Now, of course, The Outer Worlds came out on the PS4, Xbox One, and PC last year. And yes, I can play The Outer Worlds on my Xbox One and play it for free via Game Pass. But still, The Outer Worlds was a game that I wanted to play on the Nintendo Switch because, well, there's no Fallout-like experiences on the Nintendo Switch yet. Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 never came to the Nintendo Switch, and Fallout 76, well, I really just don't want to play that game. But The Outer Worlds is pretty much a spiritual successor to that Fallout sort of gameplay that a lot of people fell in love with. You have this big open world, tons of different NPCs to talk to, tons of different quests to do with a sort of pseudo sci-fi theme. So the Nintendo Switch version of this game was my preferred version to play for this game. And of course, it was announced that it was coming to the Nintendo Switch, to the surprise of many people. It didn't seem like this game would be coming to the Switch, but Virtuos was actually handling the port of this game, and Virtuos does very good jobs when it comes to Nintendo Switch ports. So I was definitely looking forward to this game. It was pegged as a early 2020 release, and now we have an official release date for The Outer Worlds on the Nintendo Switch. Now this game will actually be coming out on March 6th for Nintendo Switch owners. So if you're a Nintendo Switch owner in March, you're probably looking forward to Animal Crossing so far, but now you have something else to play. And if you're a multi-console owner, well, you're probably playing Doom Eternal as well. So March is quickly becoming a very busy month for video game fans. But of course, like I said, there is a small caveat with The Outer Worlds on the Nintendo Switch, especially if you're a physical collector. Now, obviously, I prefer to pick up my games physically because, I don't know, I'm just kind of old, but I showed off my physical Nintendo Switch collection, and I really enjoy buying physical games on the Nintendo Switch. Well, we've been seeing a lot more things where companies are requiring mandatory downloads for Nintendo Switch games. If you want to get the Nintendo Switch version of the game, you have to download a large portion of it. As someone who plays NBA 2K every year on the Nintendo Switch, I know that I'm basically getting a cartridge with a little bit of the game on it and having to download the rest of it. But if you're picking up The Outer Worlds physically, unfortunately, you are getting nothing in the box. That's right, you're simply getting a download code inside of this box. Now, I do get it, like obviously The Outer Worlds is a very large game. It is a very big download on things like the Xbox One and the PS4, and it's better to have the game come to the platform than not come whatsoever, but still, it is kind of annoying to have to deal with things like this, to be essentially getting an empty box with a download code inside of it with absolutely no cartridge. Now, this isn't going to sway my decision to pick up The Outer Worlds on the Nintendo Switch. It's definitely a game that I've been waiting for and a game that I've been looking forward to. Playing a Fallout style game in handheld mode just sounds absolutely awesome, but I know some people are going to be really upset by this, so let me know in the comments section down below if The Outer Worlds on the Switch being a complete download with no physical cartridge is sort of going to sway your decision, or if you're cool with it. Next up, let's talk a bit about Google Stadia because, well, things don't really look too good for Google Stadia. Now, a lot of people have always written me off as a Google Stadia hater. I'm not a Google Stadia hater. I'm just someone who looks at things a bit more realistically. And Google Stadia just never really impressed me. Yes, I know that cloud gaming is going to be a very important part of the future of gaming. And yes, cloud gaming does seem to be making great strides so far. But the Google Stadia service just seemed like something that was trying to fix a problem that didn't necessarily exist. Of course, the fact that you still have to purchase these games in full price just seemed like a bit of a swing and a miss for Google Stadia. I think if they would have went with a Netflix-like subscription service, it would have been better for them. I thought the controller looked pretty cool, but Google's message with Google Stadia always just seemed a bit wishy-washy. And of course, Google Stadia has come out. A lot of people are enjoying it, but it seems like even the people that are really enjoying it, the die-hard people, are starting to ask questions like, what the hell is up with Stadia? So So Google Stadia was of course touted to have all these different features, all these different interactive things, but nothing has really happened so far with this. Pretty much, you're only able to play this via your Chromecast or a Google Pixel phone. There's still many devices where you cannot use Google Stadia. Many of the features, such as achievements and stuff, have not been added into Google Stadia yet. And a lot of people are wondering, well, when are these things actually going to happen? When are these things going to come to the service? But one of the bigger issues is the lack of game announcements for Google Stadia. At the time of this video, it has been over 40 days since Google Stadia has announced any new games coming to the platform. So a lot of people are wondering, well, where are these 2020 games? What am I waiting for with this service? Well, a Google representative actually took to a Reddit thread that was basically just wondering what the hell was going on with Google Stadia and said the following about game announcements. We understand the desire to hear more specifics on the games. After all, that is what it is about, the games. Of course, not all 120 titles will be announced by the Stadia team, as we leave it up to publishers to make the announcement about their IPs and games and which platforms it will appear on, just as we will do with exclusive content coming to Google Stadia. So Google is pretty much putting the onus on game announcements to come from developers themselves and these studios instead of Google themselves actually announcing these games, which I think is just absolutely bizarre. You want people to play their games on Google Stadia. You want people to get invested in Google Stadia. If you need to make the announcements about these games before developers do, make the announcements. You need to get people excited for this service. Google Stadia's numbers are quickly dropping off. User bases are going down as well. And people are just pretty much forgetting about Google Stadia, especially with things like xCloud on the horizon. So I don't know, it's just a very weird situation with Google Stadia. What I'm sort of equating this to is the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation 1. You might remember when the PlayStation 1 was unveiled, Sega crapped their pants and actually released the Sega Saturn way earlier than it was supposed to be released, which pretty much put the Sega Saturn at a disadvantage in comparison to the PlayStation 1. And that's sort of how I feel that this is going. You know, maybe Google looked at xCloud and said, oh wow, we need to get out before xCloud does so that we could get the bigger piece of the cloud market, and they rushed Google Stadia to the market. That's sort of how I view this. Let me know how you view it though in the comment section down below. Next up, companies are doing their quarterly financial reports, doing calls with investors, and one of those companies is of course EA. Now, if you're a Nintendo Switch owner, you might not really be familiar with EA because they don't put many games on the Nintendo Switch. Of course, we've had some FIFA games come out. We had the great Legacy edition of FIFA 2020. Of course, Unravel 2 also came out on the system, but for the most part, EA tends to shy away from Nintendo products. Now, a lot of that has to do, of course, with the failure of the Wii U. Nintendo and EA were supposed to have a big partnership with this, and it just completely fell apart. Make sure you guys check out my canceled Wii U games video if you want more information on that partnership. But obviously EA and Nintendo don't really play along well together, but I've always been of the mindset if there's money to be made, companies will go. If a system is selling, companies will put their games on this system. And obviously yesterday on the channel we talked about just how well the Nintendo Switch is selling, with nearly 53 million units sold worldwide in under 3 years. This is a system that companies should be flocking to, and you're starting to see more and more games be put on the Nintendo Switch. But what about EA? Is EA ever going to get on the Nintendo Switch bandwagon now that the system is selling very well? Well, Blake Jorgensen, who is COO of EA, actually spoke about this in the investors meeting yesterday for EA. We are always looking and discussing with Nintendo what else we could put on the platform, and as the platform grows, our interest in adding content grows for the platform. But we are also conscious of the fact that the top selling titles by a long shot are all Nintendo software, which is fabulous software, but it helps us balance the realities of how big our markets could be there. But trust that we are looking at that. You will hear more things about the future, about what we're putting on the platform. Now, what's interesting to me about that is the fact that no other third-party developer has ever said anything about the fact that, yes, a majority of Nintendo Switch owners do pick up first-party titles. When you look at the sales statistics for many of these first-party Nintendo Switch games, which we talked about in yesterday's video, some of these numbers are absolutely insane, like nearly 23 million units sold for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. When was the last time you heard about a game selling 23 million units on a console that is less than 3 years old? Like, I get it, yes, a lot of the top selling games for the Nintendo Switch are first party titles, and I don't think anyone is expecting EA to put their whole catalog of games on there, but to completely ignore a system that has a 53 million user install base because of the fact that Nintendo games tend to sell better than third party games on the system just seems like a terrible business decision. I don't know, are you guys even interested in EA games? To be perfectly honest with you, I just want the basic stuff. Give me some Madden, give me a little bit of Star Wars or something on here. Give me something, EA, because it just seems like you're leaving money on the table. And finally, yesterday on the channel, we took a look at the latest Nintendo financial report. We talked about things like Switch sales, Switch game sales, digital sales of games as well. Make sure you guys check out that video if you haven't yet to get a whole bunch of information. But last night, President Furukawa actually addressed the investors themselves, which is what they tend to do with these meetings. And something happened last night that, well, it has a lot of people upset. Basically, they just sort of reiterated what was going on with the Nintendo Switch, how things are going, what their sort of vision is for the future. But one thing that was a lot of people were looking forward to hearing about potentially was new hardware. Is Nintendo working on new hardware for the Nintendo Switch? Well, yesterday we kind of got a confirmation that at least for right now, no, they're not. So President Furukawa said the following regarding Nintendo Switch: we believe that it is important to continue to communicate the appeal of both Nintendo Switch systems and expand the installed base. Please note that we have no plans to launch a new Nintendo Switch model during 2020. So according to Nintendo, there will be no Nintendo Switch Pro or new Nintendo Switch model releasing in 2020. Now, some people are looking at this and saying, well, Nintendo has said things like this before, and of course they've changed their mind. It's been a bit of a bait and switch. One situation that a lot of people are pointing to is, of course, the time where Reggie said, no, there was not going to be a new Nintendo 3DS, and then literally the next day, the new Nintendo 3DS was announced. Some people are also looking at last year with the Nintendo Switch Lite situation, but those situations are very different than this sort of situation. With the situation with the new Nintendo 3DS, Reggie was simply addressing the press on that. They weren't addressing the actual investors in the company, people that are making this company stay afloat and putting their hard-earned money into this. This was simply just the press, so you could sort of do a bait and switch with the press with no big ramifications. Now, as far as the Nintendo Switch Lite situation is concerned, people are sort of reading that situation wrong. All they said was that the Nintendo Switch wasn't going to have any new hardware announced during E3 2019, and the Nintendo Switch Lite was not announced during E3 2019. It was announced at a different time, so that statement is still 100% accurate. They said we're not announcing anything at E3 2019, and they didn't, but they still did announce the new Nintendo Switch Lite on a different time scale. So what do I think about this situation? Do I think a Nintendo Switch Pro is going to be announced in 2020 and Nintendo is doing a little bit of a bait and switch? Honestly, if you've been following my Nintendo Switch Pro coverage for the past few months now, you would know that I've pretty much hopped off the bandwagon for this, simply because of the fact that even at its best, the Nintendo Switch Pro would still be a little bit below a baseline Xbox One model if they wanted the system to be a cheap price point of a system. So I just don't think that the Nintendo Switch Pro is going to be a reality. Maybe Nintendo will do something in 2021, maybe start talking about a successor to the Nintendo Switch, as the system will be about 4 years old by then, and maybe in 2021 there'll be sort of a stopgap for the Nintendo Switch and a Nintendo Switch Pro. But at least as far as 2020 is concerned, I'm not expecting a Nintendo Switch Pro, because I just don't think it makes sense from a business standpoint. Nintendo needs to focus on software for the Nintendo Switch, because right now they're riding a great wave of momentum. I don't think things like the PS5 and the Xbox Series X are really going to have that much of an impact on what Nintendo does in their own little marketplace. But let me know in the comments section down below if you think a Switch Pro could come in 2020. Alright, so that's going to do it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know your thoughts on everything in the comments section down below. And as always, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Check out other videos on the channel. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.